Hello, everybody. Um, I'm Suzanne, and it is my pleasure to introduce your speaker of the hour. He's got a great session coming up, and I have a bio to read about Rich Walters. So, okay. Prior to joining the team at Federation as Vice President of Programs and Grant Making in July of 2020, Rich Walters had extensive experience increasing community involvement in Jewish formal and informal learning and facilitating conversations about Israel. Rich served as the Associate Director for Israel Education at Emory University's Institute for the Study of Modern Israel and as Vice President of Curriculum and Outreach for its sister organization, the Center for Israel Education, from 2012 to 2020. Director of Jewish Life and Learning at the Jewish Federation and Community Center of Greater New Haven from 2007 to 2012, and Director of Education and Community Development at the Bureau of Jewish Education in Rhode Island from 1999 to 2007. From 1997 to 2001, Rich taught at the Solomon Schechter School in Providence, Rhode Island. He was educated at Brandeis University, where he received his BA and MA degrees, focusing on Near and Eastern and Judaic studies, politics, and history.
Thanks, Suzanne. Yeah, good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is having a productive day so far. I'm going to just provide an overview of the session, then we're going to get right into it. This is not me talking at you for 35 minutes, but rather actually playing a few games that I've put together and then unpacking that. So first of all, why games? This really came about as something that I was doing in my previous work at Center for Israel Education, where I put together a bunch of different games, not necessarily to be done virtually, but just because I found games as a great way to either introduce a new concept or as an assessment to reinforce something that I may have already done. Some of you may have even been in sessions with me where I'll often use one of the games, especially if it's in person, as a great opening activity for the learning. But of course, as we've shifted to the digital education landscape, I think games also play a really great role in keeping things fresh and lively, especially on Zoom and in small groups. So what we're going to try to do in our very, very short time together is I've actually put together 5 different games for us to play. And in a few minutes, I'm going to ask Suzanne to just randomly put everyone into 5 different breakout rooms. I'm going to post a link in the chat to a Google Doc, and for each of the rooms, there's one game. These work best if one participant in each breakout room can be the host, share their screen, and everybody can play the game together. There's also 2 prompt questions to think about as you play the game. We'll do that for about 5 to 10 minutes, closer to 10 minutes. We'll come back together, we'll unpack a little bit, and then we're going to do the opposite. I'm going to put you into a different breakout room with different people, and instead of giving you a game, I'm going to give you a piece of something. It's going to be a photo, an artifact, and you're going to come up with some ideas of how you could turn that into or use it as a game. So we'll look from both perspectives. In regards to the 5 games that I put together for this morning's session, first of all, you'll all have the link to the Google Doc so you can try any of them out at any time. I specifically built 5 using platforms that are free, so you can build your own games on any of these platforms as well, and that was very intentional because you don't need necessarily any special technical skills or know-how. And as I said to the last group, if you want further help and wow, how do you actually build a game on one of these platforms, I'm happy to walk you through that as well. And just quickly, why games? When I was doing my previous work, I came across this wonderful research article from the Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning at Indiana University, which said games help people develop a disposition towards collaboration, problem solving, communication, experimentation, and exploration of identities. And all of those are really important, and it makes learning fun and engaging and interactive. Any questions before we get started? Again, we don't have a ton of time, so let's try to get right into it. Suzanne's going to do breakout rooms. When you get, don't go just yet, because I just put the link to the Google Drive. So again, if you're in room 1, you'll see which link to click, and vice versa. So I will be popping around in case you have any technical issues, but have fun playing some games.
You okay, Ella? You know where to go? Oh, I can't hear you, but you should be going to breakout room number 3. There should be somewhere to say. I'm not sure how to do it for you. Is there a place that says go to breakout room 3? Well, how do I put somebody in a breakout room who didn't go? I think she has to do it, right? Ella, what kind of device are you using? No, I know you're there, but you have to go to the breakout room. You're supposed to go to breakout room 3. Although, you know what? I'm going to move you to here. I know what I'm doing. I'm switching you to 2. So that group is smaller anyways. Hopefully that worked. Oh, yay. Okay. Okay, it looks like some groups are just finishing up.
Yep.
Welcome back, rooms 2 and 3.
All right, here comes everybody back. I hope you guys had some fun with those games. Again, the idea was to show you some examples and get the creative juices flowing. So I'd love to hear, a little bit of the discussion, how how could you use these games? What are other types of content you could use? What kinds of questions maybe do you have? What worked, what didn't work?
It would have been helpful if we had, on our game of Israeli foods, if they had given us a list of possible words,
Okay.
stuck in how to spell all of these
Sure.
in English.
Yep. Right. And obviously, if you're doing this with your students, you may have a different option. And there are different formats for those kinds of games. If you were to build your own on Sporkle, that you could have words to choose from, a word bank, etc. Yes.
Thank you.
I was in 2 rooms. I like the memory game and the puzzle.
Yeah.
And the only question is, how do we do that each one have a turn? I don't know if I will be comfortable doing that, but each one.
You mean making it yourself? You mean making it yourself?
Like if each kid do it for himself on the computer, that will be easy. But if you have to have turns, that will be a little stressful.
Yeah, it can be a challenge. You could look, with the matching game, one way to do it is similar to how we did it. You could do breakout rooms, maybe with 2 or 3 students in a room. And if you finished it, you got a score at the end. So you could make it a bit of a competition. You could assign that as an asynchronous activity that your students do on their own instead of homework, that it's to reinforce. Maybe you're introducing a unit about places in Israel and you give them a matching game like this, and then you're going to delve deeper into some of those places the next session that you meet. So you don't have to necessarily do all of these live on Zoom at the same time. You could give that as family enrichment, as a challenge, etc.
Can we get these links? So
you have them, because as long as you kept that Google Drive link, and I'm going to send it all in one paper as well as some other resources. At my old position, we developed some print at home games that you could certainly use as well, for when things either that you could have families do as an enrichment project, or including, by the way, a print at home escape room, as well as a virtual escape room that I built, using that platform that some of you were in if you were in room 4. Other comments, questions, ideas? Rebecca?
So should I tell them what we had first?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, okay. So we had a digital or interactive Jeopardy game, which was awesome. We thought that it would definitely be a fun and engaging way. Even in our brief time together, not only did we answer a question, but I learned that Rhonda really enjoys taking pictures of cats in Israel. And so so there's like that emotional, there's that social connection that happened as well. So that's cool. And then one of the things that I was saying that could be really great with something like this with older students is having them build the Jeopardy. So you give them the lesson, but then you flip the classroom, they build it, and then have someone else do it, have other peers do it. And then in the process, they're learning, because in order to teach something, you have to know it.
Yep. Great. That was one of the things we talked about in the last session too, is oftentimes our students are going to be way more technically savvy than we are, and they can build some of these games themselves as a way to show that they learned something, or even as an introduction. All right, so now what I want to do is we're going to do 5 breakout rooms again. They can be different breakout rooms, Suzanne. I'm putting a new Google Drive link in the chat, and the idea now is click the item that I've selected for you, and how could you gamify it? How could you come up with some games to use it with your students? So let's do again, and let's just leave at least 5 minutes for us to unpack Suzanne at the end. So I guess we have another 8 to 10 minutes in these rooms too. So again, new Google Drive link, click that, and you'll see the games to come up with ideas. My restaurant group is back, I see. All right, everybody's coming back. That's great. Okay, I think is this everyone, Suzanne? Okay,
Yes.
great. All right, so now we did it from the sort of the opposite perspective. How do you make a game out of some piece or an item? Anybody want to share? Tell us what your item was and how you thought about gamifying it a little bit. Go ahead, Kimberly. Just jump right in.
All right, so we had a menu there's about a 4-page menu from an Israeli restaurant, and we actually came up with several ideas, but one of them was to pick an item on the menu and to give the kids like 30 seconds or a minute to draw it on a Zoom whiteboard, and each kid has a different color, and then we vote on which one looks most like what we think that item would really look like.
I love it. I love it. And by the way, one of the reasons I chose that is too often we think of like, when we think of materials to teach Israel, we think of like a document or a photo or something, but menus are a great tool for teaching Israeli culture. I once created a whole lesson on the diversity of Israel using different restaurants that are found throughout the country, an Ethiopian restaurant, Yemenite restaurant, Moroccan restaurant. And it's a great way to show our students about some of Israel's diversity and the different immigrant groups that came to the country and the different cultures that they brought with them. And this happened to just be one of those menus that I had relatively handy. So yeah, I love that idea of matching up the foods. And then again, you could, we realize it seems very expensive to eat out in Israel. By the way, I know this doesn't really apply to supplementary school, but if you were in a different kind of learning environment, I would encourage you to think from a STEAM perspective. You could do math with the money, how much things cost. You give them a budget and they have to figure out, you know, what the meal is, etc. So yes, eating out can be expensive in Israel, but it's also about the exchange rate too. So let's hear from another group.
So our group had the Jerusalem light rail.
Yes, the map of the light rail.
Ideas, especially like with different age groups too. Like we're talking about doing the web quest. Sorry, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Or you could do links and you go to each station and you have links. But we were also talking about like making it like a board game where you roll the dice and that's where you end up, like the stop you end up, and then you learn about the stop. Like if you end up talking to Yehuda, you have a minute to gather these 5 vegetables or something, you know, like, so you can make it. And then Ammunition Hill, you do something with the history. And so each stop you're learning. So we were kind of talking about
beautiful
ways to do that. Yeah.
I love it. And by the way, with something like the map of the light rail, you know, again, it depends on your audience. If you're working with older middle schoolers or teens, you may want to get into some of the more complex issues about different neighborhoods in Jerusalem. And, you know, does the light rail unify the city or divide the city in terms of where people live? But with younger students, it may just be like, you know, find X number of things at each stop, or understand how do you get from point A to point B. So again, with some of this content, you can definitely utilize it differently with different kinds of groups of learners. Thanks, Erica. How about one more? We have about 2 minutes left. Any of the other groups? All right, well, I'm not going to force anybody to share. I want to thank you guys. I hope that this got some creative juices flowing. And again, we're going to share with you a couple of different resources, including all of the games that I shared with you this morning. We'll put it all in one document. We'll also have a link to, there was a whole packet I put together when I was at Center for Israel Education on games for the classroom that are more printed home games than digital games. And for each game, we have suggested teaching and learning activities that can be related to it. So for example, one of the games that we didn't do today is a game I've done called Picture Perfect. It takes pictures of cats in different places in Israel, and you have to try to identify where the cats are. And then we have a whole activity on why are there so many cats in Israel, with 2 primary sources that your students can even have a debate over. Because I was always taught that the British brought cats to fight the rodent problem, but there's no historical evidence that that is true. So it could be a really fun activity to do. And these are also great set inductions. And then the last thing I would say is think about existing games and how you can adapt them for use with your students, games that they already play that aren't necessarily online games, but other games that can be modified. Any final questions, comments? Suzanne, you have instructions for us. We're actually right on time, so this is good.
I
Thank you so
believe
much, Rich.
Thank you. Thank you guys for playing with me this morning.
we're good. Thank you all. Thank you so much, Rich.
And now we go back to the original Zoom link from this morning, correct?
I believe so. I believe so, yes, for quick group share, yes. So everybody can log off of here and go and use the main link. We'll see you all in the
Thanks.
big
And
room.
feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help if you guys get stuck in how to do any of these things.
Good to see you, Rich.
Likewise. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, Rich.